Happy New Year, and welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm Vincent Franchini from Tumbler House, here with Charles Coulomb.
Happy New Year! You see, the bright, bouncing baby that is 2017 has visited us at last, ladies and gentlemen. Guy Lombardo is in the next room playing Old Lang Syne. We'll uncork the champagne in a few minutes. So, Happy New Year, ladies and gentlemen. I love New Year's, don't you?
Oh, yes. All right. First question. In early December, Angela Merkel called for a Burka ban in Germany. She said, quote, "The full veil must be banned, wherever legally possible. Showing your face is part of our way of life," end quote. Charles, what's going on here? And is this a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't know, I love the line, "showing your face is part of our way of life." Take it out of context, that would... Anyway, I think that even Angela Merkel is beginning to wake up to the fact there's a problem. She's not the quickest bulb in the box, I can tell you. So the fact that she's noticing there's an issue. No, if she wants to stay employed and siphoning off the government trough over there, she is going to have to respond to the fears, concerns, etc. of the people who nominally put her in office. And the only way she can do that is by acknowledging the great fear and distrust and suspicion that the Germans are beginning to have of Islam. And of course, the most obvious expression of that is the burqa. Personally, I think it probably conceals a multitude of sins.
How's that?
I don't want to sound sexist, but, I mean, not that bad-looking guys are great, but ugly chicks, no. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Imagine, if all you have to go by is the voice, "Hi, my name is Fatima." It's not so bad, but you see the whole thing.
Wow.
Anyway, never mind.
Wow.
That was horrible. Because on the other side, you would think that wearing burqas would make it easier for trannies.
That's true, I guess.
See? You never thought of it. I wonder if we could make the case that Mrs. Merkel is actually attacking Islamic trannies.
Obama wouldn't be too happy with that.
No, he wouldn't. But unfortunately, he's on his way out. All right, what else we got?
Okay, Norman Lord 97 asks, in light of the recent assassinations, I'd be interested to know your take on the non-liquefying of St. Januarius' blood.
Oh, well, firstly we've got to know what the liquefying blood of St. Januarius is. St. Januarius is, oddly enough, a saint, the patron of Naples, who died a long time ago. He was martyred in the 400s, I think, 300s. Anyway, 3 times a year, and especially on his own feast day, his blood is elevated for veneration by the faithful, by the Archbishop of Naples. Very big deal there. And it liquefies. Most of the time it's solid, liquefies. Well, sometimes it doesn't. Rare occasions. And when it doesn't, usually it doesn't mean good news for Naples. But that no good news for Naples can range wildly from Mount Vesuvius erupting again, which it does from time to time, to another world war. So all I can tell you really is that the blood of St. Januarius not liquefying is never a good sign. But by itself, there's no way of telling what it means. I guess you'll just have to stay tuned, and if either Vesuvius explodes, we have another world war, or, I don't know, something bad happens in Naples, not that that is possible. Keep your eyes peeled to the news, that's all I can tell you.
Okay. Referring to the news, you once said that your desire to stay informed is interfering with your desire to stay sane. This is something that many of us can relate to.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, we watch the news on TV, we see something outrageous, and we go on to social media to vent our anger.
I know the feeling.
How do we stay informed, but at the same time not let that distract us from our main goal in life, which is to become saints in heaven?
Well, in a real sense, the question is its own answer, because we first have to understand that our main goal is to become saints in heaven.
Okay.
See, that's something that many of us really don't think of, and many of us sort of put in the back burner. You know, part of the problem that we have is we tend to compartmentalize our lives. All right? We tend to put our religion is something we do on Sundays and feast days. Our job is something we do here. Our family life we do over here. This. These things are all interconnected. But ultimately, they all have to be harnessed for becoming saints in heaven.
But I think it's especially tough now compared to any other time, because I think that's actually a media strategy, is to antagonize and use clickbait and then generate discussion. Because that's how you get everyone to share social media.
Well, there may be some truth to that. And certainly the kind of news we get today is really, really annoying. I mean, think back 8 years.
Okay.
You remember when Mr. Obama became president, when he was elected? You were like 12 then or something, but, no? All right, anyway. The thing is that back then, I don't remember people going on, his opponents, of whom I certainly was one, going on and on and on about how, oh, he's not my president, and riots, and jumping up and down, and all this kind of stuff. And I don't really remember Republicans refusing to attend his inauguration and blah, 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 blah. I don't remember any of that. I'm not a big fan of Mr. Trump, frankly, although I understand why a lot of people are. But I really think there's a level of nastiness in the country today which I've not seen before. And I think a lot of it is generated, not all of it by any means, but a lot of it is generated by social media. But when you want to vent, and mind you, I do a lot of venting online myself, so it's something I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
It is good if we try to stop for a minute and ask ourselves, what is the good of what we're going to post? Who's really going to benefit? I mean, I hate Trump, I hate Hillary, okay, and that contributes how, again? Not just to my own salvation, but to the general atmosphere. I'm going to improve this in what way now?
You're exposing them, and you're telling the rest of the world how bad they are.
Yeah, except nobody really cares what I think. I mean, that's a terrible admission to make, but let's be honest. For most of us, our views carry little weight with those who matter. In a way, social media is a little bit like elections in the sense that they give the illusion that your views count with anyone other than those who agree with you. They don't. I mean, our masters run the show are going to do what they're going to do. And Charles Coulomb can jump up and down all he likes. I don't think Mr. Trump will care. I know Mr. Obama didn't. I'm sure Pope Francis could care less. I could hate them with every inch of strength I've got. And all I would be doing is straining. Certainly wouldn't bother them in the slightest. Good news is I could love them with every inch of love I've got. It still wouldn't matter unless I were praying for them. That would matter, which takes us back to becoming saints. I hate to be goody two-shoes, and usually I'm not. But on this particular issue, the world is getting every day pumped full of anger. And anger is one of the 7 deadly sins. It's not my personal favorite, that's sloth, but it's big. Let's try not to add to it unless we can add something useful. One of the things I try to do is post things I think people find informative, useful. I've been accused of over-posting. But post that sort of stuff. Find stuff that's useful, the things you like or enjoy. And don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously, if you're really outraged about something and you feel the need to vent away. But ask yourself before you do so how effective it will be, the best way to express yourself, and above all, avoid personal attacks on other people in the thread you may be following, or something of that sort. Don't behave in a rude fashion. You'll feel good about it. Nice. You're not going to convince the other guy. If I write, let's say I'm following a thread, and you write something that's diametrically opposed to what I hold, and I said, well, you know what? You hold that because you're a schmuck. Okay. Am I likely to convince you that I'm right? No. Will I show onlookers who are really who you're trying to convince that I know what I'm talking about? No. The problem with the ad hominem argument, which is what that's called, is that it's a confession that I don't have a case. If I can't respond to your point of view intelligently with some sort of response, if all I can do is call names at you, what I'm really saying is I don't have any evidence from my point of view. So, anyway, behave like gentlemen and ladies. Is that really so hard?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
We have to prove that we're right and they're wrong, and that makes us good and them bad.
Okay, all right, I'm good with that. I take back everything I said. You're right.
Okay.
That's fine.
We recently put up audio of a talk you and Professor Biersack did in the 90s on Luisa Picaretta and the Divine Will.
Yeah.
In it, you said something shocking, which was that in the Vatican, the position of devil's advocate was abolished.
Yes.
Can you explain in detail the job of the devil's advocate, and also if its absence has a tangible impact on canonizations?
Oh, sure, I can. Basically, the devil's advocate was an official for every cause of a person who was being put up for beatification. That sainthood had a devil's advocate. The devil's advocate was a cleric who was basically assigned the job of proving this person was not a saint, as opposed to proving he or she or it was. So, the devil's advocate they would completely negative. So-and-so healed the sick in Bari in 1328. Really? What's the proof to have of that? Very negative. Go over all the evidence with a fine-tooth comb. Oh, look, these 3 miracles. Oh, were they really miracles? Let's have a look at that. Now, presuming the person was canonized, and this I've always thought was a beautiful, beautiful thing. You know, they'll erect a temporary altar to the newly canonized saint at St. Peter's. The devil's advocate for that cause would do penance in front of the altar, which I just think it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Well, did it have a tangible effect? Well, yeah, several ways. It sped up the process tremendously.
Mm.
I mean, they've still got to fulfill certain rather difficult qualifications, but they don't have someone actively working against it, which means that the thing is quicker, not quick, but quicker than it would have been. That's one thing. Unfortunately, however, it's also had the effect of sowing doubt in the minds of some over the validity of canonization since the devil's advocate was gotten rid of.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a problem with that doubt, and that is that we didn't always have a devil's advocate anyway. So you're actually going to say that all the saints we had before the process was invented aren't saints.
Interesting.
Well, that's what you'd have to say. If the devil's advocate is absolutely essential for the infallibility of the church to operate in the canonization of saints, then you would have to say that until we had a devil's advocate, we can't be sure. And of course, since we can't be sure, which is insane. Now, do I think it was a good idea of getting rid of the devil's advocate? No, I don't think so. Why? Sowing doubt. You see, part of the problem, there are other things as well, but Part of the problem with so many of the changes the church has endured over the past 70 years has been that the people who inflicted them, often for the best of motivations, seemingly had no thought at all to their effect on the faithful. Something can be, shall we say, objectively not wrong, but kind of a problem subjectively. I mean, you come home one day and you find out that your mother's decided to train to be a Red Cross nurse to go off and heal the people in Ghana. Well, okay. She's never had any interest in nursing before. You're grown. I mean, you don't need your mother to be here. Your father signed off on it. But it isn't just about your mother suddenly changing role. You come home and she's going to be a go-go dancer. She suddenly changes on you. The changes themselves may or may not be good or bad. That's one issue. But the second issue is the effect of them on, in this case, the children, in the case of the church, the faithful. Instilling doubt when change is not required is a poor bargain. I mean, in a perfect world, when contemplating change, a high cleric would look at the thing and say, well, see, it's a nice idea theoretically, but how's it really going to end up? How's it going to result? And I think in this, as in so many other things, the old adage, when it is not absolutely necessary to change, it is absolutely necessary not to change, is a good guide.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But unfortunately, with human beings, when we're in positions of authority, and we're living in a period where change is seen as good for itself, that's a siren call that can be very hard to resist.
Okay. For the finale, the last question of the day.
Oh boy.
We've got many different requests from people this past month for you to answer the following question.
It's a lie. I don't know those people that I was going at. Next.
Everyone wants to know, what is your position on Father Feeney's thesis and excommunication?
Well, that's a good question. Firstly, as far as his thesis goes, I presume what they mean is that the four creeds should be taken literally. That when Trent said that anyone who makes a metaphor out of our Lord's words, unless a man is born again of water and the Holy Ghost, who shall not have life in him, that Trent anathematized anyone who would make a metaphor out of those words. And Father Feeney held that, yeah, that's what Trent said is pretty much what it is. I presume that's what they mean by his thesis.
Uh-huh.
But it wasn't his thesis, of course. He kind of caught on to the gag, but it wasn't his thesis. As far as his, what was the other?
It's excommunication.
Well, let's start with his excommunication first, because it's a fun story. First and foremost, the story that you'll be handed, that I was handed in school by a Boston Zavarian brother, was that Father Feeney was excommunicated for teaching no salvation outside the church. That's not true. In fact, not only is it not true, it's a lie.
What? How did that lie come about?
That's a good question. And the answer is this. Father Feeney was the chaplain of a student group at Harvard College in beautiful Cambridge, Massachusetts. Father Feeney was at the time, considered the greatest American theologian, and he was certainly the best-selling Catholic writer in America, both for his theology and his poetry. He was a megastar, and he knew everybody from Bing Crosby to Al Smith. He was also he was responsible for bringing Sheen and Ward to the United States those who don't know, Sheed and Ward was the largest Catholic publishing house in English before Vatican II. In fact, Frank Sheed and Maisie Ward were so fond of him. And one day the three of them were walking arm in arm with Father Feeney between them, and his claim was, "I'm the and in Sheed and Ward." So, anyway, I bring this up because Frank Sheed had something to say about the whole affair. If I forget, remind me, because at the end of the day, it's a very important statement on Frank Sheed's part. Basically, he had come to realize that the church had always taught, up until relatively recent times, that there is no salvation outside the church, and that the idea of baptism of desire had developed starting from a glancing reference to Thomas Aquinas, who doesn't actually use the word, and really morphing since the discovery of America, gradually into a "you don't need the church to be saved," which is what we hold now, as Benedict XVI said. Now, what he also saw way back then was what Pope Benedict XVI just mentioned this year, or this past year, that if there is salvation outside the church, then there's really no need to evangelize and no need to be a Catholic. That is the logical conclusion of the path that speculative theology has taken in the church on that issue. If you want to call Pope Benedict a Feeneyite, you can.
Pope Benedict espouses no salvation outside the Catholic Church?
I didn't say that. He said, if there is salvation outside the church, then there's no reason to evangelize, and there's no reason to stay Catholic. And he said that this has become the view of everybody since Vatican II. Father Feeney noticed that same phenomenon way back in the 40s, but not being a retired pope, the results were somewhat different, especially because it got him into trouble in Boston, at Harvard College. He was also a very dynamic speaker and all that kind of thing, and between believing you need to be a Catholic to save your soul and his ability in defending the faith, he made a lot of wealthy converts from WASP families. This had repercussions. They complained to Cardinal Cushing, well, Archbishop Cushing as he was then. He complained to the Jesuits. The Jesuits decided to fix the thing by transferring him out to Holy Cross College in Worcester, Mass, and hoping the whole thing would blow over. They did. Now, what was a little bit strange about this is that normally the Jesuits should not reappoint someone in the middle of a school year. But, as a dutiful Jesuit, Father Feeney had his bags packed and was all set to go. That was when the kids at the Harvard Catholic Center, and they really were the pivotal beings of this whole adventure, they said, well, why are you being transferred? You know, you're our spiritual father, our chaplain, and suddenly you married someone, you brought us in. Well, ask them why you're being sent away. So he said, all right. Then he went to go see his superior and said, well, it's because of this doctrine you're teaching. And his response was a very simple one. If I'm teaching heresy, I demand a trial. And he would give it to him. He said, no, you've got to obey, or you'll be suspended. He said, well, no, if it's a doctrinal matter, then I require a heresy trial. They would give it to him. And so he went back, and of course he initiated the protest. He wrote away to the apostolic delegate and all that. And in church matters, you know, if you've appealed your case, you don't do anything else. You sit there until they move in your case. Mm-hmm. Well, the years go by. And in 1952, Pope Pius XII issued an encyclical called Humanum Genus, in which he said, some of my sons are making a meaningless formula of the phrase consecrated by tradition, outside the church there is no salvation. Now, what is a meaningless formula?
Yeah.
A meaningless formula is something that says one thing and doesn't mean it at all. Outside the church, there is no salvation, is a part of our doctrine. You'll find it in the Athanasian Creed. You'll find it repeated by popes. You'll find it defined by popes 3 times. If, however, we believe the opposite, that it's a meaningless formula, Pius XII condemned the making of it into a meaningless formula, for whatever good that did, or for whatever he meant by it. I don't know. So then, a few more years go by, and Father Feeney receives a note from Rome saying, "You are summoned to appear." This is all published, by the way. So in case you think you've got to go to Bob's Library of Deep Dark Conspiracy Knowledge, you know.
Did you write a book on this?
Oddly enough, I did.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's put out by Tumblr House.
Oh,
fact,
that's right.
I wrote a history of baptism of desire. What was that thing called? Desire and Deception.
Yes.
So actually, if you really want to know in detail all this stuff I'm going on about, read the book. Oh, was that a plug?
It's a pretty good book.
I think so, but what do I know? I wrote it. Anyway, so what should happen but that he says he gets a letter from the Holy Office saying you must come to Rome to answer grave charges. And his response was, "All right, that's great. What sort of a tribunal am I facing and what are the charges?" Which canon law, incidentally, requires. You don't just come to see the great Oz. No! It doesn't work that way. Even in the church, there's law. It may be stepped on constantly in our time, but it exists. So, the response he gets is, "No, you don't ask questions, you answer. You come." And he responded with more of the same. This went back and forth, and finally, "If you do not come by this and such date, you will be excommunicated." He said, "Well, that's nice, but you still got to tell me." Well, after that, it was published in the Acta Apostolicae Sedis, an unsigned note declaring that for grave fault, the priest, Father Leonard Feeney, had incurred upon himself excommunication. Again, form was all screwy, not said why, nothing. You can't just be excommunicated because we don't like you. All right? Even if you're Joan of Arc, you can't be excommunicated for that. Well, fade in, fade out. Back in 72, a representative is sent from Paul VI, who informs Father Feeney that, well, we know that no censures were ever validly levied against you. But so that no one can say they were, or that you're laboring under them, you're hereby absolved.
Wow.
He wasn't asked to recant anything.
Ooh.
All he was asked to do was to recite the Athanasian Creed, which, oddly enough, that being the centerpiece of what he held, wasn't much of a problem for him.
For those not familiar with the Athanasian Creed, where does it say that in the Athanasian Creed?
Before all else, it is necessary that a man hold the Catholic faith whole and entire, which unless he do so, without doubt, he shall perish forever. Now, that's the creed we never hear about, or the creed of Pius IV either, which we're also supposed to hold, which says that outside the church neither salvation nor holiness can be found. Now, Father Feeney was destroyed through all of this as a priest, as a personality, or as a public personality. He was wrecked. He was absolutely ruined. But Frank Sheed, in his own autobiography, made a very important point, which was that Father Feeney was silenced but never answered. And he was never answered for a very important reason, and it's the reason Pope Benedict XVI reminded us of. There is no way to answer it, because all he was doing was repeating what was always believed. If you condemn him, you have to condemn St. Francis Xavier. You have to condemn St. Thomas himself. You have to condemn St. Bonaventure. You have to condemn all the doctors of the church, all the fathers of the church. You have to condemn Christ himself. Who was he to tell us? Oh, that sounded a little bit like the devil there. So, it is a problem. So let me draw this particular question to a close, if I may.
Okay.
A lot of very well-intended people are very misinformed on this issue. And there's a lot of debate backwards and forwards. But I'm afraid at the end of the day, we cannot escape from Benedict XVI's dictum that adoption of this kind of theology has brought us to the point where we do not evangelize and we do not see a need to remain Catholic. Whatever you think of Father Feeney, whatever you think of baptism of desire, whatever you think of the sun, moon, and stars, you can't deny that. And as far as Father Feeney himself goes, I would simply reiterate what Frank Sheed said. He was silenced, but never answered. I would add on my own part, he was never answered because they had no answer to give him. If they had given him a heresy trial, he would have been convicted or not. But if he had been convicted, so would have the father's doctors and so on. If he had been acquitted, then his accusers would have been guilty. And that simply couldn't be. It's the way of the church, it's the way of humanity. That when a problem has no easy solution, you shuffle it off. You play kick the can with it until it isn't a problem for you. And that's really been done since Father Feeney's time. But as Pope Benedict points out, it is a problem for us now.
Yeah.
But you know, that's all grim and nasty. For heaven's sake, it's New Year's.
It's New Year's.
Come on.
There's nothing left to do.
The old year is dead. The new year has yet to annoy us. Don't worry, Inauguration Day is coming up. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Vinny, we wish you all a very happy, healthy, prosperous, and holy 2017. God bless you all, and Happy New Year.